Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to the week number 12 of our course. There's a previous message to this one, so please pay close attention to it. It's important to take into account all these different things. This particular video will be for developing the contents of our class. This week I would say that we have one of the most important components of the class we talk about, because we talk about initially about the warm-up, and then we talk about the possibility of making students read the text and different approaches for that. Later on we talk about questions that, as I mentioned, could be exactly after the warm-up, exactly after the reading, or it could be in a different moment. Here we go with the main activity or activities of the class, right? So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to show you some different alternatives that you can use, just a few. I know that you're pretty creative and you can do much better things. You can have different alternatives, etc. Okay, so let's discuss about that. Let's say that once they have read the text, you have a lot of alternatives, right? You can use many of the different details that you have implemented before. You can go. It really depends on the intention that you have with the class. You may dedicate it to grammar practice, to exercises, to different, let's say, ideas related to different skills. It is really up to you. Yes, you are the one who is in charge of your class. You determine what is the interest that you have for your class, and you will go. Okay, now it is very important, and I mentioned this a lot, but I just want to make it really clear. The purpose of using literature in class is, one more time, to use it as a tool. Okay, so remember that you're supposed to be in charge or to deal with some other aspects, and that's important, but you're not really like checking if they appreciate it or not, if they think it's really cool or not. Remember that at this point it's an instrument. Hopefully that will be like a side consequence, now that they may appreciate it, or they may be encouraged to read more or something like that. If that happens, well, that's wonderful, right? But that should be not the main concern. The main concern should be the language. Okay, I would recommend that over here in this section of the class is where you put most of your creativity and most of the possibilities of enjoyment for them, right? Let's say that warm-up is, for example, a good moment for that as well, but it is kind of short. It's not supposed to take that long. So if you can invest your creativity, your time, your resources in here, in this section of the class, that is like the main part, you can say it. It will be great, because you have enough time. They already have read. They already are familiar with the vocabulary. If you prepare any glossary or something like that, they already have it. If you prepare any study guide, this is the moment to use it. Well, all these different things, right? This will be the moment, right? Well, guys, I would like to share with you, please, to this video, and in this moment, if you can go and check the attachments that I put into the comments of I think will be into the post itself. You will find a file that is called instructions stations, and in brackets class 1 basic 2. Okay, So this was for a real class that I did at some point in my life. This was for a language center, right? And I had, I think if I remember correctly, this was teens. Well, they were actually 12 or 13 years, I think, old. This was like an actual class that I prepared for them, and that I implemented, right? I was really lucky, and it is that I had a group of 25 students, which were perfectly for the way I had planned. Yes, I had organized different stations. What is a station? Basically, I divided the class in groups of 5 people, and I put like 5 tables around the classroom. Well, they have either table. Back then, I think they have students' chairs, the one with the arm, right? So I just like came early into the class, organized them like somehow before they arrived. Um, and well, that is also interesting. No, like when they arrive, they expect to find like a classroom organized in a particular way, but then there's this element of surprise, no, like from the very beginning, which can be good. I mean, at least it's different, and different is nice, right? So I organized these groups of chairs all around the classroom, sorry. What I usually did was to put like one in each corner, so they are like far away from each other, and one in the middle, right? Um, well, I don't remember particularly if I asked them to select the groups themselves, or if I divided myself. I think that probably I gave them the freedom to select their groups, because it's a language center and people are a little bit better behaved somehow. But I have done these sort of activities of stations also in schools, and in those cases, I do recommend that you, as a teacher, sort of divide the group yourself. You make the distribution. Students don't like that, uh, but I don't know. I think it's better in terms of discipline, in terms of classroom management, in terms of making sure that it's not only one person that makes the whole, or that creates the whole result for each station, and well, people who may be problematic to be together because they get distracted, because they have personal problems, well, different things. I guess it's better in that way. You can balance them um, somehow, right? Now, every time that you as a teacher sort of organize groups, yes, if you make these frequently, the resistance will be less and less, right? So no, I would recommend that. That's my experience. Now I don't know how it works for you. Sometimes there are also like different tools that you can use to randomly create the groups, so it doesn't look like you are really being arbitrary or something like that, right? So you can use that selection, instruments, dices, online programs, distribution, things like that. The problem is that maybe you can be a little bit unlucky and you get precisely all the terrible kids of the classroom in the same group. And, well, I don't know if that's going to be so good for you. So we have these different groups, and what is the idea, guys? You sort of have a clear letter of instructions into each station. I'm calling a station to each one of these groups of chairs, right? What is the purpose of this? You cannot be everywhere at the same time, right? So if you have really a specific, let's say, set of instructions, you don't need to explain the whole thing, yes? And you don't need to repeat. Students, and because you're students, ask a lot and ask things that you have already explained. You have, mentioned very clearly, and you spend your energy trying to make everything be clear. but then well, they were not paying attention, or they forgot it, or they were excited about what they were supposed to do, and then they really didn't pay a lot of attention to it, right? So the advantage of having the instructions over there is that if they have a question, you can say, well, really, it's over there, yes, and that is going to solve a lot of problems. It's going to help maintain your energy, and it's going to somehow help you monitoring everybody at the same time. Because if you stay 5 minutes in a single group waiting, or somehow explaining against the instructions, well, the other group can be disorganized and stuff like that, right? So I have these instructions that you're seeing over there in the file. In each one of the stations, they were printed, right? They were over there, and the idea is that everybody works simultaneously. Yes, they are working at the same time in different activities. Yes, as you will see eventually when I describe each one of these different things. I try, it was because of the curriculum of the time of this particular subject. That by the way was English, right? It was an English course of Basic 2, as I mentioned. They had already taken a level. And the idea is that they can practice all of the main abilities, right? So that there should be like a station for speaking, the other for writing, the other for reading, and the other for listening. And then we have an extra one that can be miscellaneous, that can be combined, it can be something different, right? So as I mentioned before, they are working at the same time, and I give them an amount of time, a maximum amount of time. It was usually 15 minutes, yes, because I remember that back then I work on Saturdays. So I started my class at 8, and the first break was at 10, yes. So basically we could start more or less at 8, 15 minutes. When the first 15 minutes have passed, the group who was on the station 1 moved to station 2, station 2 to 3, 4, 5, etc. Right? It moved clockwise. Sure, sometimes I had small problems, such as that one group had not finished by the time that in which they required to change, but that was fine. Yes, let's say not finishing, it's okay, because if you had, I don't know, 10 tasks, just exaggerating, 10 tasks in each station, and they were able to do 8 or 7, well, that is enough amount of tasks in order to evaluate certain things, to verify if they understood, if they put into practice certain things, etc. Right? So that's not fine. That's just fine. It's okay. No problem if they have not finished. Sometimes they get a little bit stressed, like, teacher, it's almost time and I'm not able to finish. Okay, don't worry, but try to finish the next. That sort of gives them extra motivation to be really dedicated to it, right? Because they say, well, I didn't finish my previous station. I'm going to try to do my best to finish the other one, because if I accumulate and finish a station, probably the teacher wouldn't like that much, and my grade will be affected. I let them speculate. Yes, I actually never told them that I was going to give them less grade or something like that. But that's extra motivation, right? The problematic thing is that a group finishes really quickly, because that also may happen, right? Like before the 15 minutes, they sort of finish before, and well, you have a group over there just fooling around and not doing much, and maybe interrupting the other ones, or maybe they just sit down and play with the cell phone. And Colombian people are really selfish and envious by nature. So you will receive this kind of comments like, so why are they playing and they're not doing anything, etc. Right? So I recommend that you know your class very well, and that you plan your activities so there's no extra time. Yes, let's say that's in those times that you are going to uh, limit for the rotation. Well, it would be enough, right? And that they don't have like extra time for it. So that will be it. That is the basic model. Division of groups, different stations, one group in each station, 10 or 15 minutes, and they go to the next, to the next, to the next, until they have finished all of the different stations. Actually, most of the time I was able to do first station, break, and final rotation, right? That's it. Now, what I am telling you, like of this particular model, well, because it works for me, it works like wonders for discipline, for classroom management, for monitoring, because you can actually monitor everybody at the same time. Like you can just go to the station 1 and then to the 3, 4, 5, go around. It looks very hectic, and I don't know, it seems like everybody's working at the same time, and that's really nice. Like this environment in the classroom, at least in my case, seemed really good, and they felt like they were doing a lot of different things, like tons of things. Sometimes students told me like, teacher, we do so many things, yes, rather than the classical thing of, you know, just spending 2 hours doing exactly like the same thing, right? Which is not bad, yes, it's good. I mean, you can concentrate during 2 hours into like the same process, and that's fine, that's completely fine. But for certain ages, for certain kinds of people, that sounds really good. And actually it gave me extra publicity, yes, with parents, for example, because they would say, when they arrive at home, so what did you do, sweetie, today? Oh, we practiced speaking, writing, listening, we read, we talked to each other, well, etc., right? So for Language Center, that's really good. I used to receive really good comments and really good evaluations, because the perception is like, wow, you're, you know, wonderful because you do these many things. Sometimes parents have that expectation, right? Like you're supposed to do, I don't know how many thousands of things in class, and that is, you know, an expectation that shouldn't be necessarily encouraged. But when you can do this many, let's say, amount of things, and still be pedagogical and didactic, and let's say contribute with learning without saturating the student, well, great, no? That's it. So as I mentioned, I'm telling you this experience because over here I have many activities, right? I am not asking you to plan a class like this for your lesson plan. You don't need to do stations if you don't want, right? You can just concentrate on a single activity or two, and that will be just fine, yes? What I decided, or the fact, or the reason why I decided to share this with you was because I have many activities, so you can probably inspire in one of those, sort of change it, alter it, adapt it, or definitely you don't like any of these and you say, you know, I'm going to do something completely different because I didn't like those activities. That's fine, right? At least this may be an example of something you don't like, so it's useful at some point, okay? But well, so let's check this station number 1. As you can see, it says instructions, station number 1. I am starting for the number 1 just because it is the first that is on the page. But remember that it doesn't have an order. Yes, it can be, I could start explaining you the 5 or the 3 or the 2, and that will be just fine. Yes? So, let's go with the station number 1. If you go to this file, again, that as I mentioned as instructions station class 1 basic 2, you will find this label station number 1. It says, number 1, put the puzzle together in group. What puzzle? Well, very simple. If you go to the page number 2, you will find an image, right? I just downloaded that image from the internet, and it's a group of kids at the door, and they have different costumes. Seems like it's Halloween. Actually, I think that back then was like October, so I took advantage of the season, and that's it, right? So that's the picture. What I did was to just randomly cut it, yes, and then put it into a bag. And voila, that's a puzzle, right? Now, there are some programs on the internet from in which you can actually put a picture, and the program will create like the lines for the puzzle, and you can later like specifically cut it. But it took long time, and I didn't have the time back then, so I just randomly with the scissors did it in that way. So the first thing was to put it together. Now, something that you must know is that in the previous class to this one, I asked them to read different texts, right? So they were supposed to read different texts. I used different like mechanics for this. Some of them the typical just take the text and read it, or read it at home, and some other that were different, but we already talked about reading, right? So we're not going to talk about this today. So I remember that this particular reading was Goosebumps. That was this sort of horror or thrilling stories for kids or for young adults. And well, this was about some kids going into Halloween, asking for candy, trick or treating, and getting some sort of scare because of a monster, of a character that was sort of like that. So I just asked them to put the puzzle together, and when they were able to put it together, sure, they realized, oh, so this is about one of those stories that the teacher asked us, right? So there is an immediate matching over there. Now, second one, it says observe the picture, fill in the blanks with the correct word individually in your notebook. It is not necessary to write the questions, okay? So in this case, I didn't need like to make any copies or something like that. Everybody did that in their notebook. Parents are tricky about opening the notebook of the kid and not seeing any work. So this was somehow a way to guarantee that everybody had some progress in there. I would satisfy the parents, but at the same time, they will be doing something meaningful, not just writing anything just for the sake of it, right? So we have some different fill in the blanks activities in there that are actually a way to review vocabulary. Yes, we have things like such as he was scary, he was it was supposed to be the ghost. He was magical, he was a magician, and stuff like that, right? So in this case, I was practicing vocabulary. I was somehow revising comprehension of the text about the goosebump things that I mentioned before, the reading that they were supposed to read. And then it says in the number 3, create 4 additional sentences about the picture. Use past. So over there, I am practicing somehow also past. But at the same time, I am using the verification of the reading that they were supposed to have prepared for this class, right? The number 4 is just a logistic thing. It says when you are finished, disorganize the puzzle, mix it again for the next group. Yes, so I didn't even have to do that myself. Yes, because that will demand more time every time that a group arrives in there. So I have to disorganize it or something like that. No, they did it themselves. They put the let's say the pieces into the bag, and that was it. Right? So I didn't even have to do it myself. It will be time consuming, it will be tiring. My students were for me, right? And actually they did it with pleasure, because they say, well, no, I'm not going to leave, the task easy for the next group. I don't want them to do it really quickly. No, just let them suffer a little bit. So you can use Colombian selfishness in your benefit, right? So that was the first, right? Now, if you take a look at the number 2, yes, instructions of the number 2, basically this is a really standard, let's say, activity of using your text guide, your textbook, sorry, and the methodology book that normally they make students buy in different language centers. And that, one more time, let's say parents are really picky about, I am investing all this quantity of money in the book, and it is empty, they are not using it. I guess that anybody who has used or who has worked in language centers have listened to this kind of complaint. So sure, you can sort of satisfy your parents as well, while you are doing something meaningful, right? So turns out that one of the readings that I assigned the kids to read was about famous people. Let's say it was a narrative test about soccer players, actors, and some other people, and it was a little bit biographical somehow, but let's say it was less boring, or I hope so, than the typical readings of the book, right? So based on that, and of course based on some progress of the book, they simply have to answer these questions, as you can see, individually. Complete exercises for A, 7A, 7C, 8A, 8B. Please write in your notebook, not on this paper. And you have to be really, really somehow monitoring this, because the first instinct is, because I had a 4 or 5 photocopies of this, and students will write in their notebook the answers, right? Why is that? So they don't have to write more, yes, but also maybe the first instinct of them is writing the answers in the paper that I give, and then that will sort of mess up with the activity, because the next group will have the answers and stuff, right? So that is something that you should be really careful about. But that's it. Yes, that was the second part. So again, I am combining the text, the reading, the literary reading exercise with something that is expected, that is filling in the blanks exercise, and everybody loves that. I mean, everybody, parents, because students normally hate it. But well, I am doing it. I am doing it for 10 or 15 minutes. So sure, students can complain, but they say, okay, well, it was not that long. It was not 2 hours of filling in the blanks, and that's fine. That, at least that worked for me. I don't know how is it for you, but it worked in that way. Okay, but well, guys, so this is the station number 2 of the first class. Next video I will continue with the number 3, and I'll show you some other things. Hopefully, we're getting the hang or the idea of these possible different activities. Okay, thanks a lot. See you in the next one.